Thank you for listening to this episode of the Lending Thoughts podcast, sponsored by Rocket Pro. I'm your host, Bekim, and today I'll be interviewing my friend, Chris Grimes. Chris is the CEO and founder of FundMore. We have a fantastic conversation ranging from AI to how to close loans in less than 24 hours to how everybody in the industry needs to work together to create a client solution that works for everybody and allows more accessible homeownership to actually take place. You're not going to want to miss this episode. Have a listen. Chris, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, nice to spend some time with you as well in this sort of environment.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good to chat with you. We get to chat often, but we get to be on record here today. So this is fun. So Chris, can you tell us your life story in 60 seconds or less? And I know some of this story, so I know it's super, super exciting. So I'm going to hear you try to condense this a little bit.
Condense it in 60 seconds. Well, grew up, lived in 10 cities, and the first 16 years of my life sort of followed, I guess, the nomadic life in some ways, with my dad moving across the country. He was a weatherman. And anyways, when you're in the government, all roads lead to Ottawa. So eventually I ended up in Ottawa.
Mm-hmm.
From there, got into the financial industry and spent some time in wealth management, spent some time brokering, spent some time running brokerages. Now I'm in technology. There's a little bit of sort of pivots in there with some fun stuff in between, but that's where I am. I probably did that in under 30 seconds, but now I'm happily married for, I guess we're going on 17 years. Other than that, continue to just try to have fun and find the next opportunity. Things have pivoted and changed in my life, but interesting journey.
And before we jump into what you're doing today, what would you say was the most interesting job that you had in the past? Because if I recall, you've done a lot of different things in your history.
I have. I've sort of been one of those things where a new opportunity opens up. I was like, I'll go try that and see what happens. Like, to be honest, I've done everything from be a mail carrier to a sommelier to professional coaching, soccer. I ran a few other, this is my fourth business, I guess. So been around and tried different things. And I'm probably one of those people that, even coming out of high school and going into university, it was one of those things that was sort of a last minute decision because I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I think it's probably true today, where I'm still not convinced what I want to do, but keep following the door that keeps opening and having fun while I do it.
That's great. How does one decide to become a sommelier? Like, is that something you get, pulled into? You're at a party and you see a sommelier and they're doing a great job and you're like, I want to do that? Or do you get dragged in? Like, what was that about it?
Halfway through university, I despised the program I was in and decided I would just step back and quit and figure out what I was going to do with my life. I was always passionate about cooking, enrolled in a cooking program, and then went out and talked to the industry, some chefs and some friends that were in the industry, and realized what kind of life that probably was going to be, and quickly decided that wasn't the right path and unrolled. So there was always this sort of passion about food, wine, things like this in the background. And after one of the businesses I had took a terrible, terrible pivot, is the best way to describe it without getting into an hour-long conversation about how a business can go bad. Decided I need to take a year off in life and decided to pursue one of my passions. And so I decided to study alcohol and wine in particular.
Amazing. I like my wine, so I'll have to pick your brain on that another day. But tell us about what you're doing now. I know you're CEO and founder of FundMore. What does FundMore do? What does that look like? What problem are you trying to solve?
If I go back to the original mission statement, it was to make homeownership more accessible. That has taken a ton of pivots and changes to get to where we are today, which is a technology platform solutions for lending and really trying to modernize the lending process for banks, credit unions, private lenders through AI-led technology, really with the goal to, on the mortgage side specifically, how could you fund a mortgage the same day? So when we thought about this mission, which was, how you made homeownership more accessible, and went down the path of thinking about becoming a lender, starting as a bit of a digital brokerage, and eventually realizing that technology that lenders are using today was so outdated that something needed to be changed and improved on the back end to be able to support a better experience for the Canadian trying to buy a home or trying to refinance their property. And when we went through that sort of process back in 2018, 2019, and understood there was a lot of emphasis and money and energy being put into the front end experience, the sales process, the engagement process between either direct to consumer channels, broker channels, and the consumer. But a lot of that wasn't going to be realized until the back offices of these banks were sufficiently improved, to say it mildly.
Mhm.
Technology stacks that they're using are 25 years old, and the major change management consideration for these financial institutions to make these types of changes, so it's not something that they can easily rip out and replace, which is why they're so old, coupled with the fact there just wasn't a lot of innovation going on in the space, particularly in Canada. And so when we had these conversations with lenders, there clearly became a need, and we started working with companies like yours and trying to figure out, what would the solutions be to provide a better experience in the back office, so that brokers eventually and mortgage specialists and branches and everyone else in the ecosystem could actually deliver a better experience for their customer or the Canadian trying to buy a home.
That's a pretty grand mission. Try to close mortgages in a day. I don't think we're there yet, right? I think that we'd call that an aspirational goal as of right now. Is there still a vision? You said that was the original vision, the core products, once you sort of figured it out and got past the initial idea of homeownership accessibility. But do you think there's still a future in which we could imagine homes, closing in a day, the full mortgage, signing with a lawyer, like the whole bit? Because we've talked about it in the past, and it's one of the things that I riff on quite a bit. It's like, it's one thing to say that you're going to do a great job, but you actually need a lot of different people and a lot of different companies inside of a value chain to all deliver. So how do you think about that as it pertains to, really being able to bring it all together to make that happen in one day? And how far are we from that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question / statement there. The reality is we're not there yet, but I don't actually think we're that far away. Every year on this journey, I think we're getting a little bit closer. It's still the sticker on the wall, if you will, to sort of quote the Elon Musk of the world, where you kind of put some North Star on there and try to target it. But you're right. It takes an ecosystem. There's no single partner in this industry that was going to be able to execute on this. And that became very clear and apparent from day one. And we've gone out and spoke to a lot of the critical components, particularly in the back office side of it. I think there's some more work that needs to be done between the back office and the front components as well, and further downstream. I think when we look at it, there was 4 big challenges to execute this vision. Number one, so you collect a mortgage application that goes into a back office, and there's a massive disconnect. Today, it takes 4 or 5 hours for an underwriter to restructure a deal so they can actually adjudicate it. The adjudication of a loan, frankly, with technology today, AI, even some of the early days of AI, if you go back 15, 20 years, probably could make a decision on 80% of loans today. But structuring it in a way that it can actually do that is where all the pain comes in. So there's a big problem there. The information isn't structured for lenders to actually adjudicate. And there can be a myriad of reasons. Could be information's incorrect. Could be the income doesn't add up. It could be, typos or whatever else you want to come up with as to why that information is not 100% accurate. I think part of it is also exposure and transparency of what's actually happening on the lender side. And for good reason, you can't expose all the lending policies because you'd create more fraud than there already exists in this market. So you have to be controlled about how that information is exchanged. And I think this is a great use of technology where it can do a lot of the work without having to actually expose the potential challenges, and you can avoid the risk of challenges in that first phase. But that's something that needs to be improved, how these front end systems and people talk to the back end systems and people, so that you can expedite that process to adjudicate it when the application comes in. The second big blocker is really around the due diligence, actually following up on what's been said in the commitment letter. And so today, as you know, information comes in, the data is being collected somewhere, typically on documents, sometimes direct from source. And there's a chain of custody of that information. It doesn't always transition to the back office properly. So even if you're using things like the Flinks and other systems like that in market to collect bank data, as an example, that information is now recollected and started over. It typically starts over in the back office. So there's some work there that needs to be done throughout that value chain to be able to ensure the custody of that data across that chain so everyone can accept it. I think access to CRA data or information for validation will help improve this as well, these different checks and balances. But then even looking at Canadians as a whole, and today, we're not super trusting of all of these technologies. And so the uptick rate of using a Flanks isn't very high. You still need to count on the physical documents that are being shared. And so having the ability to extract that data and then cross-reference and validate it. And this is a great use of AI today, where it can actually do that on a lender's behalf. So that's a big challenge that we're actually working at solving ourselves. And then you get into some more of the back office challenges and restructuring and reworking of deals. And up till today, we get to a point where the deal needs to be readjudicated and it slows the entire process down. And sometimes that's because new information is brought in at the last minute. Sometimes it's simply that the deal just wasn't structured for an investor on the back end properly, or there was something that came up in the title search or whatever happens later on in the process. But these are all things that can be fixed with the right partners at the table and bringing in the right checks and balances at the right time. Like I kind of use this example. There are situations in the workflow that perhaps if we check title on day one, and the reason why we don't do it is because the cost is too high to do it. But let's assume we can get to a point where we're 80, 90% confident on day one. As soon as the application comes in, this deal will likely fund. So then the case where, okay, can I validate the title at that point? And then can I ensure through that entire journey past that adjudication that that same check can be used in the entire flow from the lender to the title insurer to the lawyer, so that it doesn't have to be pulled a second time, which slows the process down and then obviously adds cost. But it's an example of something that could happen earlier in the journey that typically isn't. It's normally at the very last day. And if there's something that comes up, it's going to start the whole process over. So it's an example of something I think can be worked through with some of our title partners in industry and lenders as they rethink how they would approach a product. The last thing I'm going to say in this is that the closing experience today is improving, but it's not where it needs to be. And so that's something else where I know there's a lot of cool companies working on solving that solution, but I think we really need to get to a solution where the data is transferred in one full packet that they can trust and they can quickly action, leveraging technology so that they can enable their people to do the job once and not three times, which is, again, something that seems to happen in reviewing the documents and having to draw them up manually and things like this, where it slows the process down. And so if you think about that, I kind of see FundMore in this as more of an orchestration between all these different partners and tools in this industry, but we're not going to solve the whole thing on our own. But like I said, I think the technology is now capable of doing it. It's just getting everyone else up to speed so we can actually execute that vision. Now, I guess the bigger question back to you is, as a lender, do you actually need to fund a mortgage on the same day? And so that's the question that I'm always sort of pondering and curious is, if we actually executed on it, would anyone actually use it?
I might not give you the same answer that everybody else would, but for me, faster is always better, because I think ultimately the consumer is seeking certainty, and the faster you can provide that level of certainty, and this isn't, a base assumption here of mine, this is, data. We've asked our clients, what do they want above all else? And the answer that we get back in every survey is certainty. And the way that we deliver that certainty is through speed. For me, that's exactly what I want. We reference it often, but it really is a miracle of technology when you think about companies like Uber, when you think about the Airbnbs of the world. What are they really giving us? As somebody who just booked a hotel room actually yesterday, planning an upcoming trip, like there's still a lot of unknowns when you go to hit that final pay button and you're really wondering, like, okay, I know I've seen a couple photos of this hotel, but like, I know you're dressing it up for me a little bit. I know that you're only providing the best photos. So then I've got to go like look at the user photos on Google and other places. Like I have to do all these other things to like validate. But like if I truly trusted the information and I truly trusted the provider, and I've had great experiences in the past, and I know that so many other people around me are having this great experience, I just want you to deliver certainty to me, and I want you to deliver it very, very fast. So I think that for us, it's so important to try to just deliver for our clients in a way that they've never seen done before. And I do believe that there is a future world in which that could be real. Really, why does it take time? For all the reasons that you just mentioned. A lot of it is just reworking of information. You mentioned one thing that doesn't cost anything but gets re-verified usually 3 to 4 times throughout the process is identification. The broker collects the ID, the lender then confirms and collects the ID, and then the closing service and or attorney, whoever is providing the legal document such at closing, they then do a recheck of the ID. I get it from a fraud perspective. Like, why are we doing that? Again, it's chain of command, it's fraud mitigation, it's all those things. But there are much better ways biometrically and otherwise to verify identification and make sure that someone's name is what they're telling you it is and matches the ID and matches the credit report and matches all those other things. Like, that technology is not 100 years away. It exists today. We just haven't found a way to bring it all together into the same platform, which leads me to my next question on that, which is like, if I'm thinking about FundMore, obviously I'm very intimately familiar because we are a client of FundMore. We were one of the first clients of FundMore, in many ways served as a consultant to helping build the product that exists today to help be suitable for our business. And we'll continue doing so to make that product great. But how should I think about FundMore if I'm unfamiliar? Maybe I'm a brand new mortgage agent and I'm hearing, hey, FundMore technology, like, what is it exactly if I've never really done a mortgage before in my life, and who does it serve?
Yeah. So thanks for sort of setting me up to pitch FundMore a little bit there. But if you've never heard of us, or you're brand new to the industry, or you needed to think about how we actually support the ecosystem. So a mortgage application is created, you've written up your first deal, and you submit it. The action of submission then comes to a back office of a lender, and that is where we sit. So the minute the application is created, it then flows into a workflow automation tool that we have in market.
Just so I could jump in there, when I think about the application, like, you're talking about Finmo or Velocity or Filogix or Boss or any other.
Correct.
The agents working in that as their application flow, and then when they hit the submit button from their application flow with a full application, it's entering FundMore. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So they choose Rocket Pro on their system. It then goes into Rocket's lender side of their business, and their underwriters will begin working on our platform too. So that's a great example of where we would start the flow. So our system has been designed to work with underwriters, fulfillment specialists. So these are people that would actually evaluate documents, to review the document process. We have some tools to automate that now. We have some tools going down that chain again, the mortgage journey, if you will, to get to funding. After you go through the decision, it then goes through a commitment generation phase, and then it goes into a fulfillment phase. During that fulfillment phase, there's a pre-fund and funding process. We have tools in market today that automate that. So one of the things that most lenders will do, and it's also where some of these challenges sometimes arise, is they do a pre-funding check. The example of an ID. Well, was the idea even part of this package? If it was, why does the name have an S at the end and the mortgage documents don't? So the things that get caught, so that when they move into the funding process, it can go a little bit faster. And so that's a tool that we have to validate all the lending policies, potentially the insurer policies. So this is the CMHC mortgage, Canada Guarantee, or Sage and mortgage insurers. So it can run their policies as well and make sure that all those checks have been done correctly, and then moves into the funding process. That's typically where we sit today. We also are moving into the servicing side of it. So we have a servicing platform that's maybe 2/3 of the way built, and part of it's already in market with one of our lending customers. And so this is sort of post funding. So after the application's been funded, lenders are working with your customers to ensure good process. Post funding, this is things like collecting payments, managing the loan, often upselling new opportunities to these customers in this journey and process, and then eventually discharging. So all that technology is there as well.
There's a lot there. So you're thinking about FundMore today in the context of being the solution for all, like, the underwriting to pre-fund and then connecting the other parts of it. So it's kind of like that middle point, really, where the magic happens for the lender themselves, correct?
That's the way we view ourselves today. Like I said, is sort of this orchestration component. If you think about the 3 or 4 phases of a mortgage journey, you make the decision to buy your home, you meet with your mortgage agent, broker, you buy your home. That's sort of phase 1 and 2. You then get into the lending side of it. They're making their decision. That's where we sit today. And then they fund the mortgage. It goes into a servicing platform or core banking system or something like that, sort of the last phase of that journey. And today we're sitting in that middle phase with a little bit of the last phase as well.
Awesome. So right now, I mean, very code base driven. I know there's a lot that had to get built out to get there, but I mean, it's right in your name, right? FundMore.ai. How do you think about AI playing a position in the lending space? I mean, there's so many ways in which I think it could be applied, whether it's, credit scoring or automated underwriting or fraud detection, all the way down to picking the loan product, which one would think might be simple, but not as easy as people think. Often the wrong loan product is chosen either at the broker level or the lender level, even like matching it to rate. One of the things that our teams have been working toward is like, just how do you pick the right rate, the right investor? Like, how does AI, some internal decisioning, improve the experience overall in the future?
I think there's two worlds of AI, and I think there's we'll call it 5 to 10 year version of AI, and then the one that's available today. I think in 5 to 10 years, it probably gets to a yes, no. And I say that because I think the capability of what we're seeing today and some of the technology that's being built around, like you said, the pricing engines, how it makes more complex decisions very fast. So if it can look at all these different data points from the application to the documents to the lending policies themselves, the product guidelines that are all associated with this, and underwrite a deal, to be honest with you, it's available today. But I think for a lender to be fully comfortable with that sort of context driven decision, we're probably 5 years to 10 years away. And then you have people that are hyper enabled to just say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, to validate it. And you're doing that more from a risk compliance standpoint than anything else. I think where we are today, it's an exceptional augmentation or enablement tool for those that are looking to adopt it. And I think there's some key areas where, you're going to start seeing benefits. One, I've talked about a couple times here, but it's around the document review phase. Its ability to take unstructured and structured documents and really understand what's in there. So that's one. And then you can get to a validation and acceptance much quicker. And if there's challenges within it, that can be exposed much faster. So if you're an underwriter working on a file and within seconds it's telling you, look, the income's not adding up, and here's why. And I think the here's why is the important thing. It's not just, here's a bunch of bank statements and it's giving you some numbers, but actually giving you some context. And here's why is because it's actually reading the lender's policies and procedures. And it's saying, look, based on our policies, we can't actually accept this type of income for this type of product. And so to your point about, having it make a better product selection, well, it can also make a product selection quicker or make the adjustment to the product selection. So when the underwriters are running the scenarios and trying to find a way to make the deal work, it's enhancing and enabling a much quicker experience. That's a use case on the back end for lenders that they're going to see some value over the next couple of years as it becomes more and more available. And then I think there's two other really great use cases for AI. And I think first one is I'll go to the servicing side of the experience. Right now, and you can think about any one of you have a mortgage, you probably log into your TD, RBC,
Rocket Mortgage app. Yeah.
Rocket Mortgage app, and you're going to go through that experience and ask, I need to make a payment change. I need to increase my payments. I want to pay out my mortgage early. And typically now there's a waiting process. Like I'll give you an example. We just made a payment on our Scotia Bank mortgage. My wife seems to do this like every quarter. She likes to pay something off. We go and say, let's initiate a payment, and it takes 7 or 10 days for something to actually happen. My assumption is someone's approving it on the back end, and then eventually someone triggers that action to pull the money out of our account and put a lump sum payment on it. When I think about that experience, though, it's ridiculous. It should be able to make a payment the same day. Part of that is payment rail technology improving. Part of it's just how I engage with it, though. Now, when I first go in, I'm not really familiar if it's my first time wanting to do this and trying to understand this. If that whole process is now through a Copilot or GPT type experience where I'm just asking it questions and it's giving me feedback and giving me the actions that I need and confirming it, that experience for me is a lot better. And this can be done through voice. It can be done through texting. It can be done through an interactive app. That's a use case that's also available today. And you're starting to see it pop up more and more in financial institutions. And I think you're going to see that trend continue over the next couple of years, where borrowers are going to have better experience communicating with these agents at these banks. And these agents being these GPT type agents.
Yeah, an AI bot.
Yeah.
How much of that is comfortability, do you think? Because I'm thinking back, like just a few years ago, and maybe even up until recently, people were skeptical. And I think, the average consumer, like technology companies were often trying to trick consumers into not recognizing the fact that they were talking to an AI bot. But now it seems that people are actually more comfortable. And I think that'll even grow over time, that people are going to get more comfortable knowing that they're talking to an AI bot. But if they could solve their problem in 3 minutes, as opposed to waiting 7 to 10 days for a bunch of humans to press a bunch of buttons on the back end, like why would they want to wait, is the way that I think about that. Like, are you seeing that too? Because like you said, like some of these things exist. It's about implementation. It's about comfort. Like, are we approaching that level of comfort yet, or do we still have a ways to go too?
I think the demographic shift, as millennials are becoming a larger population base who grew up on mobile devices, I think is going to be the triggering factor that those that haven't fully adopted or become comfortable with it will. That's an inevitability I think we're all facing. But I also think the way it's able to adjust to you in any mood that you may have on that particular day, engaging with your financial institution as an example, is also a big win for you as a consumer or the financial institution behind it. That, if something went wrong and you're irate and you're able to talk to something that, is actually able to empathize with you very quickly and change its tone, whether that again be over phone and it's a voice, or whether it's you're texting or messaging something, a bot is an incredible use of AI today. And I think it helps improve that customer experience, which ultimately will make this become more and more comfortable for the average Canadian looking to do something or change or make an update on their situation. I also think there's a world where you actually don't have to make that call. And I think this goes back to my 5 or 10 year vision. This was the last point I was going to make. I actually think the average person will have an agent that's going to live in their iPhone wallet or Android wallet. And that will be the data that it needs to share with financial institutions. And the banks will have their own agents, and these two systems will just talk in the background. And it's going to give you the opportunity to simply say, do you want your mortgage renewed, or do you have an update coming up that you want to make a payment? It looks like based on your financial situation, you'd be probably best suited to make a lump sum payment today. Do you accept it? And it's just done. That's probably the 10-year path where you have all the servicing components of your financial life will be solved by an agent representing you and an agent representing your financial institutions.
That is a very bold and exciting vision as I think about it. So to summarize back to you in a way, picture an app on your phone. That app is your finance app, right? The way that we may think about a Mint or a Credit Karma or Borrowwell or something like that. And instead of being somewhere I can just go look at all my finances, it's actually a place where I can command my finances or dictate what my finances are going to look like. So I would just go in there and I would be able to, type text or voice to text, please raise my payment on my mortgage up to the 2020 limit that I can, and make one extra payment a year within the allowable time frame, and can take that as instruction, communicate as an AI agent to the AI agent at the financial institution, and make those things happen for me. That is very cool. 10 years would be incredible. It might be a little longer, but like that to me is like the future of finance.
Yeah, the only caveat I would put in there is that I think it will also make predictions for you. So it's not you just having to command it, it's actually making the recommendation to you, saying,
Yes.
look, I think it's in your best interest to do this. And then you making that decision. I think it's important you control the decision, but I think it'll be in a position where it has that capability.
Yes, you should refinance. You should renew your mortgage early. You should stop this automatic payment for some subscription service that you no longer use anymore to save money. I couldn't agree more. And I, for one, am very excited about a future in which that happens. I want to remove many of those inconveniences from my life. And as I think about the generations coming behind us, Chris, like they demand convenience in all aspects of their life. They don't want to deal with any of these things when I think about the demographics, because everything has always been right here. They've never had to go to a library and go through a card catalog to find the book that they want. They just type in the name of the book and they hit order in a single click, and the book either arrives to their front door or downloads right to their application. And even the fact that that might take 10 seconds of load time is an annoyance to the generation coming behind us. So that is, I believe, where we're going now. The question then becomes, like, does that excite you? And I guess to the follow-up to that, so call it a two-parter if you will, what would frustrate you today about the current experience? And then again, building off the back of that, like, what excites you about that future experience?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still frustrated that, we've been driving this mission for 5 years, and banks have been on this journey of digital transformation for, seems like, as long as I can remember. It seems to be the buzzword. I think you go back and they had buzzwords all the way back to the 50s of automation, and we're still sitting here in 2020s, and automation is still a word in their digital transformation journeys and projects. It's slow moving with financial institutions. And if I could wave a magic wand, I would find a way, whether it's us or someone else that's trying to do some similar things in market, that we just jump forward and wave the magic wand and support this digital transformation so that we can execute on this mission that I have, that, how do you make it easier for everyone so that more people can buy homes? It's really simple. But until there's a way to speed up the digital transformation, that's my frustration. I think there is a lot of cool and exciting technology and innovation happening around the space, but not getting full adoption from the full ecosystem as fast as I'd like it, makes it difficult to execute on the timeline that I would like to execute it on.
Mm-hmm. And then, as part of that, again, like, you're obviously doing some pretty cool stuff. I see a lot of new players popping up. I actually don't think the innovation will come from inside of the big legacy institutions. I think the upstarts are going to be the one to bring that. And I think others will eventually be forced to adopt that if they can't figure it out themselves. So what excites you as you look forward then?
I think that, the nice thing about the real estate market in whole is that it's a gift that keeps on giving, and that sky's sort of the limit for opportunity around innovation. That there are so many broken processes within that entire experience, from the minute someone decides to buy a home until you securitize it and sell it on into a secondary market, and all these things that happen well down the stream of funding. There's continuous places for companies like mine to go, and yours, frankly, to go and find ways of improving and getting to an overall better experience. And that, it's exciting that there are improvements coming and that there are improvements here today, but also that there's still lots of things to go and fix. And, maybe it doesn't entirely answer your question, but it's sort of how I see it, that you can keep coming up with crazy ideas and figuring out, is there an opportunity and someone willing to work with you to go execute it?
Yeah, totally get that. So then I feel like I know this answer in advance just based on our conversation, but I still have to ask it because maybe it's even grander. What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want your impact to be on the industry and life?
That's a big question. I think at the end of all of this, two parts. If I can help change the way mortgages are processed when we sort of hang it up, it'll be a win. If I'm sitting here in however many more years and very little has changed, that will not be successful. Even if we move the needle a little bit, I don't think it's enough. I really want to end this journey with saying we actually made an impact on how mortgages are processed, and, supporting the Canadian getting a home. And it's probably a big statement, but that's really why I'm trying to do what we're trying to do. From a different perspective, just on life in general. And I don't know, I think it's too big of a statement to kind of reflect too much on it. But once this is done, I'll go find something else. Like, where's the next door that will open, and figure out, where I'm going to go next. Last night, I had the privilege of sitting next to someone. He was telling me his life journey, and it was quite interesting. He's about our age. And, he started off as working in a restaurant, and then, decided that was done. And he went in, ended up starting a technology company, exited that, became a CEO of some other company, and now he's a pilot. It's just bouncing all over the place, right? And figuring out where your life takes you and having opportunities to, or being willing to open the door and figure out what's next. But it's probably a long-winded answer.
I think it's fantastic. It's about riding the wave and going where your heart takes you. And I've always respected and appreciated you for that. You know, when you get your mindset to something, like, I'm going to go do that. And then you seemingly will go and attack it. And you attack it with all the energy that you have. And I think that's the important thing is, you know, knowing where to apply that energy and then ultimately actually applying your full self to that thing. And you can build a lot of great things that way. So appreciate you, appreciate your partnership. And thanks for being on the Lending Thoughts podcast today.
Yeah, again, appreciate you having me on and looking forward to doing some cool things with you guys in the next couple of years here.